Recently, I got the chance to hang out with my friend and podcasting partner, Graham Davidson. If you don't know his channel, Man v Film, do check that out. But yeah, we sat down, we watched a couple of movies. One was The Caller, which I have reviewed already. You can check out my review for that if you haven't seen it yet. The other film that we sat down and watched was Don Coscarelli's The Beastmaster. Now, the biggest draw for me in this, bizarrely, but I think for most people, it was Tanya Roberts, who as a child was my favourite Bond girl. It sounds like insanity, I think, to most Bond fans. But yeah, whatever. It was the 80s, man. So yeah, I went into the Beastmaster not knowing anything about it, other than it just looked like one of those crappy kind of Conan the Barbarian type rip-off movies. And yeah, Graham told me it's by Don Coscarelli, and I'm like, oh dear, okay. I've not enjoyed the majority of what I've seen from Don Coscarelli so far. He has a very particular kind of style of filmmaking that I think I'm just not in tune with. But as we started watching this thing, I realised I'd seen it before. I realised I'd watched this as a child. I also realised that, blimey, my mum and dad certainly let me get away with watching some crazy ass stuff as a kid, because there's some rum bits in this for sure. But I must have seen this when I was about 6, I think, 5 or 6. I have strong memories of this from when I was a kid, particularly of the two stoats. So it follows this story, if you can call it that. This guy, played by Marc Singer, who apparently was an absolute horror to work with on the set of this film, which does have sequels, apparently. But yeah, he plays this guy who he is able to communicate with beasts, hence the Beastmaster. He's part of a seance kind of thing that was going on by this priest, this satanic priest, but it gets interrupted. So then he grows up out in the wilderness with an adoptive family, and then they realise, oh, he can talk to beasts, and then it's hard to say what's going on from there, because quite frankly the film just moves from one weird set piece to another without any really great connective tissue. It's not very focused at all. It's all over the place. Characters come in, they come out, they come back again later. Marc Singer's main character is just wandering around all over the place, getting into different scrapes, and you're just like, what's any of this in aid of? There's just no focus. The performances are pretty terrible, mostly across the board, but particularly from Marc Singer. This guy is not a leading man. It does not seem to me that he should have been cast as a leading man. I feel like they were able to get him dirt cheap. He had the physical body they needed for a character like this, and they just worked with what they had. But clearly the guy was not meant for big things. This film was actually quite a chore to get through. It would have been if it had been on my own, I think. The fact that I was with a friend and that we were able to just talk about it as we were watching it made it quite entertaining. And the fact that I suddenly had flashbacks to having seen this as a child also made it quite entertaining, because I was suddenly left thinking, what other bits am I going to remember now? But I remember, yeah, so the main character has these two stoats, and I remember them getting into a battle at the end, and one of these stoats sacrificing itself. Yeah, it's as ridiculous as it sounds. Most of the film is like that, to be honest. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you've ever seen a Don Coscarelli film, you'll know what you're walking into, essentially, with that level of ridiculousness. I feel like here, though, it's kind of cranked up a notch. But yeah, a stoat sacrifices itself. I remember that really affecting me as a child and being really sad when the stoat kind of leaped to its death in order to save Singer. It's so bizarre that stuck with me all the way from my childhood. I always knew I'd seen that in a film. For some reason, I thought it was Lady Hawk, and yet I had no memory of ever seeing Lady Hawk. I don't remember seeing Michelle Pfeiffer in a film, which as a kid I would do, because I loved Michelle Pfeiffer from like quite an early age, all through my teenage years, and yet I don't remember seeing Lady Hawk, and yet I remember the Stoats in Lady... No, they weren't in Lady Hawk, they were in this. But it was just quite amusing that those childhood memories were just lodged in the back there, and sitting down to watch this film brought them all back. Painfully so in some quarters, because as I say, this film is not my cup of tea. Now, I know Graham really loved it. I think he's given this like a 4-star rating on Letterboxd. I ain't going to give it a 4-star rating. I think there's some nice kind of practical special effects work going in. There's one really epic explosion at one point where they've gone to town on the explosives. But as I say, it's far too disjointed for me. There's a complete lack of focus. I don't really care about any of the characters because I don't feel like they're fleshed out in any kind of meaningful way. They're just, this is a person with certain powers, now go on a journey. And it's a journey I don't care about because I'm not invested in who they are as a person. It's a product of its time. But in the worst possible sense for me. Never been the biggest 80s fan. I know a lot of people are like, the 80s are where it's at, man. I never was. I'm not saying nothing good ever came out of the 80s, but I feel like a lot of stuff from the 80s ain't all it's cracked up to be. And this is definitely one of them. Yeah, 2 out of 5 from me. Still had a little soft spot for Tanya Roberts, despite the fact that, yeah, she's not the best actress in the world, but nostalgia's a funny, powerful thing at times, even though it's something I don't often suffer from. But yeah, The Beastmaster, 2 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Have you seen it? If so, what did you think about it? Leave your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on the film. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.